What a treat. I'm here live with my friends Brian Wiedman and Rick Akers from Heritage Comics. I'm Nico, your weekend update correspondent with comicbookinvest.com. Brian, Rick, would you please introduce yourselves to our live audience?
Hi, everybody. I'm Brian Wiedman. I'm a comic book grader and consignment director for Heritage Auctions.
I'm Rick Akers. I am a consignment director and comics buyer for Heritage Auctions.
Now, these guys sound as fancy as they are, but two of the most level-headed, down-to-earth people in our community. It's really a treat, and there's so much to talk about. We discussed before the show how sometimes I fear that Heritage may be intimidating to people who aren't familiar with purchasing items from them, either in the new buy it now offerings or in the live auctions. Rick, you had mentioned the transition that you made from being an eBay buyer and seller and your history on the CGC boards to working intimately with Heritage. Can you talk a little bit to those people who may be unfamiliar with Heritage and think that it's something that's a little above their pay grade?
Yeah, I mean, I was a dealer in the early 90s, and then I went on and did other business for many years. Got back into comic books about 6 years ago. I told my wife, I said I would like to start playing around with comics again. And she said, well, that's fine as long as you don't use any of our money. So I ended up saying, well, what am I going to do? I still have some comics in the basement, but I want to kind of get more into golden age books. That's what kind of was appealing to me, seeing like Phantom Lady and things like that. So I sold some of the books that were in the basement originally on eBay, and that was what I knew. I had been away for many years. I wasn't even that aware of some of the other options out there. And then I became aware of the CGC boards. Then I became aware of Heritage. And the next thing you know, I begin to see that, wow, there's all these avenues and all these options for me to buy and sell and grow my collection. And one of the things that really kind of drew me to Heritage, and something I would kind of tell people that's great about Heritage, as opposed to a lot of other options, are that you can kind of, in a way, you're kind of trading off. I see all these people come to me and they're like, hey, I've got this amazing Spider-Man 1 and 4, but I really want to get into some Fox Golden Age comics. So I'd really love to get, if I could just get a Science Comics 2. Do you know anybody who has a 5.0 Science Comics 2 that I could trade my 9.0 Amazing Spider-Man 4 for? And I'm like, well, if they have it, they probably aren't looking for Amazing Spider-Man 4. And those transactions are very difficult to complete because you have to have two people who want the exact same opposite thing. But Heritage really allows you to kind of do that, because you can say, oh, there's a Science 2 coming up. All right, well, I'm going to bid this much for it because I know I've got this Amazing Spider-Man 4 that's worth this much. And then when I win, I'll just trade in my Amazing Spider-Man 4 towards that Science 2. And I began to see that that's how it's worked. I began to consign more and more with Heritage. I began to sell more and more with Heritage. And next thing you know, I'm like, wow, this is a pretty cool way to kind of trade through Heritage and get the things I want and divest myself of the things that I'm not as interested in, because we're always evolving as collectors, right? We're always, it's always the next cool thing we want to get. And maybe there was something that was the last cool thing that we're like, I had it. It was cool, but I want to try something else. And so I found that Heritage was actually a really easy place for me to do that. And when I was selling my books through Heritage, I began to see that, you know what, even after having a commission, I was actually making more than I was selling them on my own privately.
As a funny side note, I actually graded some of his books when I started, before he started working for Heritage. So I think it was Lon or Ed that dumped them in my lap, said, "Here, grade them." So,
That's funny.
Brian, I have mentioned to you that I think you have the most underappreciated Instagram in the world, not just in comics. I am your number one fan. It is absolutely amazing what you're doing on Instagram. For those who are not familiar with at Heritage Comics Grader, Brian is kind enough to document the collectibles that cross his desk. And it is truly astonishing to see what you're kind enough to share with the public. Can you talk a little bit about the motivation for creating that Instagram account?
well, there are a few things. First of all, I think it's just neat to see. Nobody really gets to see what I do. And nobody gets to really see what I have in front of me, and so I'm super lucky in my life, to be in a job that I'm in. And so what I wanted to initially do was I tried to use Twitter. I wound up posting a few things to Twitter. I told my boss this is what I'm going to do. He was on board with it to try and get social media involved in the business, and that failed spectacularly. It was awful. Nobody joined up, nobody watched, no whatever the reason was, and I found it wasn't the right platform. So then, about a year later, it was almost a year to the day. It was really strange. I, uh, I I was talking to one of the sons of the company, Mikey Halprin, and he said, "Well, you should use Instagram." And I'm, oh, what's Instagram? I've never used it. I don't know if you can see how old I am with the gray, but I had never seen it. And so he explained it to me. It was more of, picture documentation, and that runs along perfectly with the comic, industry. People like to see things in the pictures and the covers. And so I just decided, hey, I'm going to take a picture of what comes across my desk. And if it's cool, I'll just post it. And so when I started, I said, I'm going to post one a day, Monday through Friday, and see if that works. And that's kind of how it happened. I haven't really changed from that format.
Brian had my heart racing when he was looking at your Instagram. I could feel, I could feel the palpitations. That was absolutely amazing. So, guys, what is Heritage buying? I mean, if there's anything that I think our viewers want to know more than anything, it's what the heck are you guys looking for?
Do you want to take this, or you want me to take it?
I'll take the first part, and if you have more,
Okay.
add to it.
I was just going to say something about consigning, so go ahead.
Yeah, no, you go ahead and start.
I was going to say, what most people don't know is that we don't own 95% of what we have. That's not ours. These items are consignments from people around the world and we're selling their stuff for them. And our platform gives the audience, the largest audience in the markets, whatever category you could want. That's all I was going to say. But we do own a few things, and that's where Rick comes in.
Yeah,
I true full disclosure, that was kind of a setup. I knew that, so
I didn't when I first started. I really honestly thought, because I knew, I've known Lon for a long time, and I really just thought he went and bought collections everywhere.
Well, Mikey explained that to me. Basically, it's the only reason I knew.
But that is a misconception, as people think we own everything, and we don't.
If someone does want to sell something, they're more than welcome to, and we're open to buying things. But generally speaking, I think the consignor will do better consigning the items to auction. And
we actually do try to talk them out of it.
Yeah. We're looking for their best interest.
Can you tell me a little bit about the new Buy It Now function on the website?
Absolutely. Yeah. Comic Market is an option for people who don't feel comfortable bringing something to auction, but would rather have it out there at a listed price. And they're able to take offers. So the way Comic Market is working is it's primarily set up for dealers or people with larger CGC collections. We're only doing CGC graded books right now. Maybe in the future it'll go into other items as well, but we're really focused on CGC graded books. And so if you have a collection or you have certain books that you want to list onto that, you can join the Comic Market dealer program. You can make an application online. And then as you get into the program, you can list your own books. It's an incredibly simple user interface to put your books up for sale. And then you are given the option where people can make offers to you and you can accept them or reject them. And our commission on that ranges anywhere from 5% to 10%, depending on the value of the book that you're listing. It's as simple as listing your book on there. When it sells, you sending the book to Heritage, and then generally 7 days after the buyer has confirmed receipt of the book and there's no problems, you'll get your check. We also have an option that a few dealers are beginning to look at, where you can actually send the books to us and we will photograph them and put them up there. There's even an option where, let's say you looked and you said, "Oh, I really need $5,000 right now, and I have $10,000 worth of books that I want to list on Comic Market." You can send those books to us, and we can even advance you half the money against that and list them on Comic Market for sale.
Now, are there items or classes of items? I mean, is there a run on, for example, Matt Baker books or pre-code horror books or timely books? I mean, is there something that you guys are particularly in the market for this moment that you weren't 6 months ago? Or, I mean, how's that kind of thought process go? Is it really a matter of looking for classic keys or?
Well, I'll say this, that it just feels like the entire market is red hot right now. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I assume you agree with me on that, Brian, that
it's insane.
Yeah. I mean,
I would say key books are hotter than most, but the whole market.
Let's talk about, I mean, this is not my area at all. I mean, when it comes to comic books, I think that, Golden Age is just, flying off. High grade bronze is unbelievable. I mean, if you saw, we just sold a Silver Surfer 3 in 9.8 for, I think it was 38 or something like that. So it's pretty incredible. But the thing that I'm just really blown away by even more, that is not my area, but maybe Brian can speak a little bit, is the Pokemon.
Oh God,
unbelievable!
Pokemon's gone crazy, and Pokemon is driven purely by social media at this point, and other talent getting in the behind the push, and it's insane. Logan Paul did a whole bought the Pokemon box and then opened it on a live stream, and oh my God, it's just everything doubled and tripled after he did that. So it's crazy what Pokemon's going through. Pokemon's I don't know, doubled, tripled in 3 months. It's almost impossible to say something like that, because nothing goes up that much so fast, but yet it's been going insane.
How do comics compare to other collectibles, if you can speak to that, in Heritage? I mean, is this, are comics leading the charge ahead of sports cards, Pokemon, everything else because of television and film, or is it just an across-the-board sort of bull market for collectibles? I know Brian and I had spoke about what we had both observed, which was a pretty soft market in January for comics. And with COVID in March, it's just been unbelievable since then.
Well, listen, I personally believe that comics have been going up nonstop for 40 years. I mean, let's face it, it's really been since I was 5 years old and started collecting. I told my mom, comics will always go up. Comics will always go up. I knew at 5 and 6 years old why they were going to do that. Now, why is that? Because everybody knows Spider-Man, everybody knows Superman, Batman, and Captain America. They know these names, Batman. Where would we be without Star Wars? These iconic things in our lives. So I think they're more like a blue chip stock. Now, I'm not saying invest. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that's just kind of how I view them, as this very steady progression. Now, certain things cause that to go up and down dramatically, or up dramatically and down less dramatically. I wouldn't say we're very volatile, but lately we've been on the upswing like crazy.
Wow.
Absolutely. And one of the things that's encouraging about that, and why I think Brian's comment about being steady, is, there haven't been, we've been in this COVID period, and there haven't been new movie releases out during this
Right.
time.
Absolutely.
And yet here we are, right? Like,
Right.
so it's not, everybody has there's been comments I've heard people talk about how, oh, there's a crash, because it's so everything's so movie generated. Well, it's been a year now almost, and here we are without any
And
new
that
movie
could be
releases.
very well what prompted January. In November we had that year, so that would have been November of 2019. Prices were amazingly strong for our November auction. Come around January, February, when COVID hits, at the same time they said, "Hey, we're not going to make movies for another year." And so the market starts dipping. But then COVID put everybody in front of a computer and said, "I got nothing else to do. What am I going to do? I guess I'll add to my collection because I still have money. I'm not losing money in the stock market. I'm not losing money, anywhere else. And I can still sell my books online, or I can still send them into Heritage because they're still open." And so prices have just never stopped going up since then.
Yeah, I was frankly concerned how a community that is built on gathering together at conventions would respond to quarantine and an end for some substantial period of time to massive comic conventions in metropolitan areas, and am incredibly heartened with how we've rallied. You guys were kind enough to bring so many cool items to share with us, and I'm so anxious to start to talk about some of those stories. Brian?
So this is my second day of work. Back in 2016. So I got handed a book. Now, this is not the first action that I've ever held. I had held one at Wizard World Chicago Comic-Con probably, I don't know, 10 years prior, maybe a little longer, but I had held one prior to this. It was Raw. So this is my second ever action one. And then, of course, it's sold for $956,000. I like to say $1 million. I'm holding $1 million. So on my second day of work.
There goes my heart again.
So I've gotten to hold some neat stuff. Mind you, none of them are mine. So I'm playing with other people's items. So
one of the things I think a lot of people talk about is whether or not Detective 27 will replace Action Comics #1 as the King of the Mountain. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Rick, do you have an opinion on that?
I think Action 1's always going to be the King of the Mountain.
I have to say so. I think Batman 1 is cooler. I mean, Detective 27's cooler. But I don't think that, I think everybody likes The Dark Knight, but when it comes to #1s, you're talking about an Action 1. It's the first superhero, and because he's the actual first, he's going to be the king.
Yeah. We are in agreement, guys. So Golden Age Superman comics mean a lot to people. They really do. What do you think the allure is with Golden Age Superman comics?
I think Superman comics, especially the Golden Age era, and I think of all those great Fred Ray covers, in that period, which is my favorite of the Superman artists. But they are it's kind of like America, Americana. It's like apple pie and baseball and Superman, and so I think there's kind of a nostalgia there that is pretty strong, and I think even now people are kind of longing for that feeling. And you know what? people are there's also something about Superman that's kind of like a uniting force.
Right.
That I think that it's another thing that we could use right now.
Unquestionably.
Hey, you notice that he never went and attacked other countries. He never stepped in. He always said, "We need to come together the right way and do things for the right reasons." And images of Superman 14 and images of the other one. The
Superman 24 is the other one.
24. Those are, to me, are what Superman's about. America and us being able to make decisions and for the right reasons, instead of being so divisive.
Amen. Well said, guys. Brian, what's the next one?
This is actually the Mile High Suspense 3.
Oh, I wanted that so bad.
He's still my heart.
They actually thought this didn't exist, and then it came out. I can't really go into the backstory of what collection that came out of, but when it was found,
I'm sorry.
It was a big deal. So it's crazy. And a 9.2 to boot.
Guys, for people who aren't familiar with comics, maybe they're not super nerds like us. Can you explain to them what Suspense 3 means?
Rare.
It's Suspense 3. I mean that when the Gerber book first came out.
Right.
I mean, I think that there are a lot of people who kind of didn't really know about it at that point, and it's just that incredible Schomburg sacrifice cover just kind of jumped out to just about everybody, and it was the book. I remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, it was like, oh my gosh, I had a chance to get one. There was this comics buyer's guide that would come out every week, and comics buyer guide or some of his little paper, and people would sell books on there, and there was a very good minus copy of that for $300.
Oh my goodness.
And for some reason,
throw the money at that now.
I know. And so this is the book that I wanted, and I know so many people want. People who are like into more eclectic, more unusual stuff, rather than hero books. That is the Action One, of that, and Fantastic 3 are kind of the Action One of those kinds of books, and that is a pretty incredible book. And I finally got a restored copy at some point.
Oh, congratulations!
Well, it's gone now.
Son of a bean.
Everything sacrifices with Rick.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is funny, because I actually started doing the exact opposite. A year ago, I was like, I can sell anything. Now I'm like, I'm going to hold everything. So we all go through cycles,
Can you tell people about the importance of Alex Schomburg's work to comics?
Well, he did a lot of the war stuff. To me, it was the iconic imagery. It's always overcrowded. It's always, you could look at it for an hour and still see something new each time. And it was also, to me, it was very, in the 40s, it was very aggressive in propaganda. So it always made sure you knew who the good guys were versus who the bad guys were. So, I mean, obviously everybody knows the Nazis are bad, but he would also do that with all the war books and every single thing he did. Yeah,
and this is actually kind of tied for my favorite. I have a copy that I showed Brian just a couple weeks ago of Daring Mystery 1.
Oh wow!
Which I think is which is his first comics cover, and he did just some incredible. That was kind of an early kind of science fiction futuristic kind of cover, right. And he did some pulp work, and the guy he's just incredible, huge contributor.
Mine's the Terrific 5. If I had to have one, I'd
want
Terrific 5.
Yeah. Now, guys, Daring Mystery Comics #1 is
That's
the first timely. That's your copy?
Yeah.
That is your copy. I see it now. Wow. Yeah. Unbelievable.
Yeah, just such a cool book.
Yeah, the first timely comic.
And again, you know who the good guy is, you know who the bad guy is, you know who's needing help, and very iconic. I love it.
And timely, of course, for those who are not familiar, the precursor to Marvel Comics, right?
Atlas.
Yeah.
Precursor to Atlas, and then Atlas turned into Marvel.
Yeah, and I mean Marvel 1 I think is a little before this, and then,
Oh, forgive me. I'm sorry.
yeah.
Oh, I'm
No, it's
sorry.
right.
We're talking Marvel Comics. I
Yeah,
apologize.
Marvel 1, yeah. Yeah, but this is just a great kind of futuristic. Look at that vehicle, pretty incredible. And he did. Gosh, when I think about Schomburg, I mean, all those Marvel mystery covers he did, just so many incredible things. And then that Terrific 5, we just sold a nice copy. I think we have another one coming up in the next signature.
Yeah, I don't know if we've got a photo of that, but
Who is more prolific? This is going to be a question I ask you, Rick. Who do you think was more prolific, Schomburg or my favorite, L.B. Cole?
I think Schomburg was more prolific. I think.
You think he did more?
I think so. I think he did more covers.
Really?
I think so. It would be interesting to know. Maybe there's someone out there who
Cole
knows
did
that for
something
sure.
like 650. That's why I was curious, because Cole has done a lot. Yeah.
I did not know he did 650 covers.
Yeah.
Well, now you got me second guessing myself.
Yeah, and Baker's nowhere close, including his unattributed work.
No. I think I know there's some guys who are watching this who know this number right off the top of their head, but I think it's like 150, 170, something like that.
And that includes the unattributed stuff?
I believe so.
Wow.
It's funny because Tony and so many of the guys that really have that number down and that have all of them. There's a couple of guys out there that have all or just one or two short. I've had probably 95% of them. Wow. But it's somewhere. I've heard numbers 160, 170. I've heard numbers about 230, 240, something like that. But I think the 230, 240 are including the books where he had interior artwork, like some of the Lassies and things like that he did work on.
Yeah,
Matt Baker is pretty awesome.
What I think people can just tell is you guys are comics guys, right? Like your enthusiasm for the stuff is infectious. Who was Robert Crumb?
So Robert Crumb was he's an underground artist who said he didn't like the corporate world, and so he started not really caring about. He refused to adhere to the code, comic code, and drew what he wanted to draw. And Fritz the Cat was one of them. If you've heard of Zap Comics, Motor City Comics, things like that. Those are all Robert Crumb books, and he has a very unique style for sure.
Got a couple of movies that were made about him.
That's true.
Some documentaries, one a feature film.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about this piece.
This came through a bunch of years ago. I would say 3. It set the record for the most paid for a piece of comic art. I think it was 7. I don't remember, 760, 780, something like that. It was something crazy. But this is his iconic, Fritz the Cat. This was probably his top 3 pieces of all time. So I got to hold that. I get to see it. Yeah. So last year, I got asked, "Hey, do you want to go to Indianapolis?" And I grew up in Chicago, so anyway, I went to Purdue, so I'm very familiar with the middle of Indiana. And I said, "Sure, why?" Because anytime anybody asks me to go somewhere, I want to travel. And they're like, "Oh, we're going to go pick up the Jim Davis collection and all the Garfield drawings." And I went, there. And so I got to meet Jim Davis. We were on his ranch, picked up 13,000 pieces of art.
Wow.
All the dailies that they had done, almost all the studio stuff that they owned, preliminaries. So that was a day. One of the most fun days, because my only job there was to count it, just to make sure we were counting them, had the right amount. And all I could do was laugh, count, because I kept getting flashes of Garfield images that you just can't, stop laughing about. It was one of my favorite times. I'll never forget that. It's the best time I ever had.
Now, Rick, you're more of a Charles Schultz guy?
Yeah, Yeah, it's funny because as he's telling that story about Jim Davis, and and I think his work is great. And I know Bill Watterson has already donated pretty much everything to Ohio State, but if there ever was a Bill speaking of that piece, wow, that's funny that piece right there. Oh man, when that thing came in the door and Jim brought it in from animation, I was like, oh, OMG. I walked up to that and I was like, is this actual from the hand of Schultz? Because that is much more detailed than he normally does his drawings. And what it was kind of a very early piece that was done, I think around 53, to promote the early like paperbacks and stuff. And that piece just sold tonight. I wanted that piece really bad. I mean, really bad. But it just sold tonight for 288,000, which is the highest price ever recorded for a Charles Schultz piece of art. And just last month in the November signature, we had the previous highest recorded sale of a 1950 strip, which was his 40th strip ever, the earliest piece Heritage has ever had from him, that sold for 192,000. So I am a huge Peanuts fan. I absolutely love Charles Schultz's work. I've had probably about 20 strips myself. I only have one now, but it's never going to leave my possession. It's kind of a example of Charlie Brown and Lucy talking to each other, and it reminds me a lot of conversations my wife and I have had. And but I think Charles Schultz Peanuts, I think it's just awesome. And
there are only a few iconic, daily strip artists that we grew up with. Schultz was. I read Schultz. I never, Garfield. My mom used to buy me the books because I always read the Chicago Tribune, not the Sun Times, and so it was always Peanuts. But I agree. Schultz and Davis with Garfield, and there are only probably about 4 or 5 more that I would say I couldn't live without. Watterson, oh my God, Calvin and Hobbes, and The Far Side. Those 4 right there were my life. I loved them.
I did too. And as a kid, I had one of those. Behind my bed, I had a little bookshelf, and it was just stacked with all those Peanuts paperbacks that were around back in the 70s. And I would read those every night before I went to bed. And so Charles Schultz had a huge impact on my thinking. There's a lot of philosophy in there, kind of a lot of kind of deep thoughts and dealing with like all kinds of different emotions. I still find his work to be just pretty amazing.
And age defying. You could still read Peanuts and it would still apply today.
Yeah.
Unbelievable stuff, guys. Unbelievable.
So what happened was when the Egyptian Queen came in, I never got to see it. They had taken it out and shot it at a day I was at the warehouse, which was at the time off site before we moved into the new building. And I got really mad because I didn't get to see it. And truth be told, I'm not a huge Frazetta oil painting person. I love his line work. I'm a huge fan of his comic art. But his paintings to me are, they just don't resonate all the time. But I wanted to see it because, it's a $5 million painting. And so when I got to go to see Jim Davis that weekend, we were driving also up to Chicago straight from Indiana for the auction. And they had decided to bring the Egyptian Queen and put it in house. So that's actually on the wall at the Chicago office, and I was able to photobomb it. So say I got a picture with a $5 million painting, 5.4. So.
It's like we're going through a Frazetta revolution.
I think so.
His famous funnies are setting record prices. The oil paintings, I got to pick my jaw up every time one comes to auction.
He's getting his due because he's outside the comic market now.
And Buck Rogers is coming to television, written by Brian K. Vaughan.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's news to me too. Wow.
Well, I'm glad to be the bearer of good news for once.
Well, it's going to be harder to put my famous funnies collection back together now.
Yeah, that's tragically what I was thinking too, my friend.
I always
was
just
like,
wanted the
oh.
Amazing Stories pulp. I just want that Amazing Stories pulp, but after our pulp auction, that's going to be unobtainable now too.
And
You
there's
know,
one coming up in the
not like
January
I can
signature.
afford it, man. Not after the pulp auction.
Yeah, the pulp
God.
auction really that was amazing, and we had some great results around, like Lovecraft work and
Oh.
Brundage covers on Weird Tales and things like that. It was really pretty eye opening.
Yeah, Rick, I must commend you for introducing so much of the CGC community to pulps. Certainly, we've seen just an incredible number of newer collectors dipping their toes in or jumping into the pulp pool here in the last couple of years. Can you talk a little bit about how the love of pulps has really, I mean, it's exploded.
Absolutely, and I have to say Brian's been a big proponent of pulps as well for the last several years, and I
Nice.
think that I am relatively. Here's the thing: when I started getting into Golden Age comics, after I had been in it for a couple years again, people started talking to me about pulps. And they said, oh, if you like this cover, you would love this cover and all this kind of stuff. But I kind of just stayed away from it. I didn't really get into it. And then somewhere around maybe a year and a half ago or so, I said, all right, I love Planet Comics. Planet Comics is probably my favorite series for covers in all of comicdom. And so, I've had all the Planet Comics, and that's my 34 right there, which is one of the great ones. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go ahead and get Planet Stories, because that's from Fiction House, same publisher, great pulps. A lot of the covers that are in the Planet Comics were derivative of Planet Stories, etc. So, and vice versa. So I went ahead and got a run of Planet Stories together, and I'm like, oh, this is so cool. These are awesome. What amazing, all these painted covers, kind of airbrush looking amazing covers. So the next thing you know, I'm getting into more and more. And then I see all the spicies, which, spicy adventures, spicy mystery, spicy Western, spicy detective. Those are pretty incredible covers, very, very racy for the time. And so I got a lot of those. And then I had a chance to get All Story 1912, October 1912, which is kind of it's the action one of pulps. And so, but
hold on, will you tell people why that's the first
appearance of Tarzan ever in anything? It's a pretty iconic pulp for sure, and extremely rare. There's only known to be around 20 copies or so. And my copy has restoration, but it's beautiful. And so, but I started talking to more people and showing more people on the boards pulps, and there have been people. I am, and I will say this openly to everyone. I am a relative newbie when it comes to pulps, even though I'm a big proponent of pulps, even though I'm someone out there who has been saying, hey, pulps are pretty cool. I will tell you that there are guys that have been in pulps for a long time that know a lot more than me or Brian when it comes to pulps. But
There's definitely a new school, old school guard go with this. I'm definitely a new guard.
I'm new guard too.
I'm not even close by decades, even close.
Yeah. So, but there seems to be a whole. Wouldn't you agree, Brian? There seems to be a whole new generation of people taking interest in pulps.
Yeah, because
add me to them.
When you slab a book, and this was why I started saying this. I started saying this probably I'm 4.5 years into my career, and my 3 years ago I was saying this is that you're slabbing books, and so you're really we know what's on the inside because we're comic guys, but when you slab a book, you're looking at a cover, and what's more natural than a pulp then? Because some of the pulps have the most unbelievable covers and way racier than comics could ever be. Like Rick said, the spicy mysteries. Holy cow! Some of them are full on nudity, and good girls, and girls in danger and bondage and torture, and those are the things that really make comics go up in value a lot. And so it was a natural progression that people would go to that at some point, especially if CGC or CBCS ever decides that they're going to start slabbing pulps. Those prices are going to go crazy because people are going to be able to see how cool they are, and it's not just going to be me or Rick or somebody we're talking to. I think you're going to see a whole new guard come in that really like pulps.
Now, I've had the privilege to talk to Steve Borak and Matt Nelson live on this podcast. If you haven't got a chance to watch them, they're incredibly open and honest about what's going on there. And they have both indicated there's too many pages to count.
Sure. That is one of the problems. The other problem is paper loss. I mean, paper loss is a big one.
What I've noticed is that people don't care so much that Rick's copy is restored. They don't care about the trimming of pulps. They just are desperate to get a copy of these incredible pieces of history. It's really kind of an old school sort of collector's mentality around pulps, and it's frankly refreshing, I think, for a lot of people who really just appreciate and love the art and love the stories. So I'm like you guys, I'm on board and incredibly fascinated to see how this stuff shakes out, and hopeful that someday, maybe we get some grading. Oh boy.
I did this picture because I like to show off. I actually held $2 million in my hand at once. It's not often you get to hold $2 million. So, when I show people that picture, I'm like, hey, take a look at this. People, especially not outside or not inside the comic industry, and they're like, well, what's that? Oh, that's $2 million. That's what it looks like. First one we have is the Marvel Comics one. It's set a record for 1.26 million. I actually got to auction that book off, which was really amazing. And then you have the Amazing Fantasy 15 and 9.4, and there's only 4 higher, so that's about as good as you get. So that was fun.
Can we talk about the big day yesterday? 10 new projects for Marvel, 10 for Star Wars. Are we experiencing a renaissance in comics, the likes of which, I mean, when I was a kid, I never dreamed that any of this was possible. Never in a million years. And it's like all my dreams have come true. Do you guys feel the same way?
I grew up watching Lou Ferrigno and Bill Bixby on The Incredible Hulk on, what was it, Friday night? I can't remember now. But I would grow up, I watched that, bag of Doritos in hand. They only had taco flavor back then. And I would have never thought that you would be able to say that there's going to be the quality of production that's out now. That was like groundbreaking, great quality at the time. I watched Wonder Woman and Linda Carter, and now seeing the amount and the quality of production that's coming out and is pretty incredible. And with Disney Plus and all the things that are going to be happening with that, it's an interesting future for sure.
The only thing I get afraid of is overload. Are we going to get tired of it? Because even now I'm like, okay, another comic movie. Sure, I'll go see it. But, am I banging down the doors to see it? That's now that Infinity War is over with, I've kind of, I'm ready for something unique. I want something new.
So if you want to watch the trailers, they're all on our Instagram.
Oh, cool.
I'm responsible for the Instagram. So when we get sued for all the copyright violations, name me.
Maybe that'll spur me into finding something new. Hopefully I won't be so jaded.
I I must say, I'm fascinated with where they're going to go. Do you guys have any theories? I mean, are we headed for Secret Wars? Because then my childhood would really be complete.
Which one? The one from the 80s? That's what I was praying for back, Oh my God, please.
We can pray together.
Please. That's what I want to see. Secret
Rick?
Invasion, Secret Wars, the newer one. I don't think I want to see that. But
Yeah, I'm down for the late 80s or mid 80s Secret
that
Wars
would
for
be
sure.
amazing.
Bring on the Beyonder.
I'm telling you, that is my all-time. That's what got me out of Spider-Man. All I read was Spider-Man. It didn't matter. All I cared about was Spider-Man. But as soon as I read Secret Wars, I was into the X-Men. Loved the X-Men and everything mutant. That's how I started comics. Nonstop, wouldn't stop reading comics was because of Marvel Secret Wars.
How about you, Rick? How'd you start?
Well, that's an interesting question because I will tell you that I did not grow up reading comics. I grew up reading Peanuts and reading those paperbacks I was talking about. And the only time I got comics was if I was sick and I would stay home, my mom would bring me over, some comics from the grocery store along with my my medicine from the doctor or whatever. So I would try to get sick more often. But a lot of what she would bring me would be like Bugs Bunny and Woody Woodpecker. Like she didn't really quite get it. But I did start reading Amazing Spider-Man. I'm with Brian. I mean, that was really what kind of got me reading. And then I really kind of stayed away from comics for a long time until I was like around 20, and that's when I got back in. And when I got back in, I was like, to be honest with you, from a reading standpoint, what really drew me in was The Crow.
Oh wow!
And Concrete, which is a kind of an obscure Dark Horse comic. I liked a lot of the independent stuff. I like the independent stuff from the late 80s, early 90s a lot. And Watchmen, I mean, gosh, that was incredible.
We've got a Crow fanatic on the channel, John Z. He loves it, and the Crow #1 and Caliber Presents have both seen kind of a renaissance of their own right here in the last like 6 months. It's crazy. Are you responsible for that, Rick? You don't have to answer that question.
Don't you lie. Don't you lie.
Well, here's the thing. I'll say this. I'll say a couple things. One, I was at least in Northeast Ohio, I was a part of the Crow back when it came out because I was a dealer at the time and I was buying books at the time from my friend Steve, and I was pushing the Crow hardcore, and I bought like 20 copies of each of the first 4 issues from Caliber. I didn't know about it during the Caliber Presents period, but I knew about it when it became its own book. And so I was like telling everybody, "Oh, you got to read this stuff; it's incredible." And so I got a lot of people to be fans back then. And by a lot of people, I mean like 10. And so and then that there was recently we had a Crow 1 that just sold in 9.6 just like a couple weeks ago on a weekly. I believe it was a weekly. I think it was a weekly. Yeah, it was a weekly. I'm pretty sure.
You don't know? You're gonna be aloof about this, huh?
Yeah, it was a 9.6 white page that sold for $19.20, and sadly that was mine. Yeah. I put it up for auction. He was mad at me that I didn't sell it to him.
I'm a little upset about that one still. I have copies. Mine aren't graded, and mine are only about a 6.0. But I only paid like, I don't know, $60 for all of them, for all 4.
Oh, hey, scroll back down for a second. That one there that I'm holding.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
That's a pretty good one.
Holy cow!
That's
spicy.
Spicy adventure cover. H.J. Ward. It's from a copy called Desert Madness, and that's a pretty sweet thing there.
Oh, he's still my heart.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, so that's a pulp cover.
Yeah,
I'm trying my best to make the explain everything so that I get accused of making a show that only makes sense to like 15 people. Tell us about this.
So this, unbeknownst to most people, is the 3rd DC comic ever made. It's a new fun comics number 3. This is larger than a treasury size, so as you can see, it was folded over kind of like a newspaper. But the reason that it looks so nice is because it was folded over like a newspaper.
Mm.
So the client called me up asking if it was worth anything, and I, get the story. She goes, I went to an estate sale, I got it for $1. And I just almost fell out of the chair because
Wow.
I think it sold for 7,500 hammer or something like that. So it went for about 8,000 and something. Not bad for $1 investment.
I'm about to
Uh,
fall out of my chair.
yeah, so I mean, this book is super rare because it's so oversized, but also super rare because nobody kept them. They were just, you know, non-existent. This is probably one of the nicest copies that exist. And the person that bought it knows it too. They realize that it was a real good copy.
Speaking of super rare, we have a super rare treat on the channel. Megan Hutchison is joining Comic Book Women 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time this Tuesday. Screenshot it now. Megan is a force to be reckoned with in the comic book community, an exceptional artist, and from all accounts, a kind soul. We are incredibly honored that she'll be meeting 3 of the smartest minds in the game. Lucy at Mama Comics, Bird City's own Laura, and comic aficionado Jen C. 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday. Thanks. What the heck is this?
So
Wow.
I'm an auctioneer. I am actually licensed as an auctioneer in the state of Texas. So I don't just deal with comic books. And part of our, we talk about Golden Age a lot, but one of the reasons Golden Age is so important is because it deals with World War II.
Yeah.
And this is an Enigma machine. This is a almost pristine copy. The wheels on the inside were all serial numbered, and these match with the serial number on the box. It's only one of 4 complete copies known that are authentically, haven't had parts switched out or scavenged. They were made to do that by the Germans. But this, if you've seen. The movie is how the Nazis encrypted their communications, and this is one of the reasons that we beat them. Was we were able to break that code.
Unbelievable. My buddy just got his hands on an Eastman Kodak Camera X Matchbox camera from 1944, and he's been elated. There is an incredible resurgence in the market for everything World War II, certainly within
dirt cheap. I mean, dirt compared to comic books, this stuff is dirt cheap. I mean, dirt cheap. It's unbelievable to me that you can get some items that are, I mean, so historically important for so much less than a comic book.
Yeah, real history.
Right. Right.
One of the items that you were kind enough to provide us a photo of is this. It takes my breath away when I see it.
Yeah, so this is the first American flag that was planted on Normandy Beach or on Omaha Beach during D-Day invasion. And that was the podium that I was auctioning on, and it was directly behind me. So I like when I don't know if you've noticed on auction days, I like to photobomb what's behind me just for, giggles. Hey, look, it's usually one of our best pieces that are up or something to look at. But I mean, historically, you can't ask for anything better. And that was our flag auction that had all the flags from Pearl Harbor and in World War II, the big flag auctions, or the big flags that they had. One of them was from the USS, I think it was the Solstice. That was the hospital ship that was in Pearl Harbor at the time of the bombing. And it's the only time I've felt like what I said on the podium matters, because I'm decent with history, but that was staying pretty low. And all I said was, "Hey, you can't imagine how many people this ship saved during the Pearl Harbor bombings, because it was unbombed, and all of a sudden the prices went, bids went crazy." But that's probably, that auction with the Enigma machine and that flag are easily my favorite auction that I've called. And it ties so much into what we do historically.
Yeah, there's such a wealth of service members and veterans within the collectibles community. Such a rich history, from everything from Mark Jeweller's variants to the Schomburg books that we talked about before. Tell us a little bit about this.
So this is Power Comics 1 through 4. The number 2 is a famous white space in the Gerber photojournals. And I've never seen, I used to own a number 4, and I've held, each individually, but I've never seen 1 through 4 together. I just thought this was a really neat thing. Have you ever, Rick, have you ever seen them all together? Have you ever had them all at the same time?
I have never had those all at the same time.
So to find and track these 4 books down, it would take you a while. L.B. Cole, my favorite artist, he did one.
I'm a proud owner of 1. I got the number 3.
Number 3. Yeah.
I really wish I hadn't gotten rid of my number 4. I feel terrible that it's gone, because I'm never gonna. These prices have gone crazy, especially anything Schomburg or Cole, but Cole has just gone through the roof.
Talk a little bit about L.B. Cole. It's really been a revolution for his books, particularly. I mean, Mask 1, Mask 2, you name it, have just seen astronomical gains here recently.
Rick, do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a Mask 1 in the January signature. And, L.B. Cole, I mean, his use of shadow, just there, I feel like, and color. I mean, when I think about like even some of his like work that isn't quite as expensive, like some of his Terrors of the Jungle and stuff like that. I mean, so far ahead of his time in terms of like something that was like completely standing out, from almost psychedelic, back in the early 50s and late 40s. He was doing things that were just, I don't think anybody else was doing at all.
And he colored them too. That's what made it so spectacular. So you can clearly see the difference between the number 2 and the other 3 books. That is definitely not L.B. Cole that did number 2, but he definitely did the other 3. It's amazing to me.
I love his romance work too, like True Love Romances 11 and some of those. Just some really, really great covers.
Yeah, I'm very angry. I just let go of a Cowboy Romances number 3, but it's like the only one. But it was a terrible decision. The moment that I listed it, somebody bought it. It's over, and I'll be mad at myself for the next year.
Thrilling Crime Cases 49.
Oh yeah,
that's my. I was gonna say it's my favorite, but it's one of my favorite Cole covers. So classic with the poison and the girl. It has like a collage effect. I always call it kind of like L.B. Cole's Cinderella Love 25, because they have a similar sort of feel to them. And I find his work really pretty special and very unique.
Can we talk a little bit about Crime Comics? Because they're moving too. For a second there, it felt like Crime was, the next romance, and it may still be. Do you guys have a solid explanation for that? Is it just a collector community that's becoming more mature and looking for or learning more about these incredible works of art?
And also the market itself was down in that area, and it's cheaper to buy. Some people are getting priced out, like myself. I can, no matter what anybody says, I get to play with all these books, but I don't make a fortune. I'm a comic book creator. So, I get priced out of things pretty rapidly. So you move on. What else is really neat? What else can you find? And crime
Right.
comics were there. Rick's Underworld Crime. That is a spectacular cover. Who wouldn't want to own that? And now it's so expensive. But it didn't used to be 5 years ago. You could buy that for, I don't know, $100.
I've had a lot of copies of that book, and it's a great one. There's a lot of in my opinion, underrated Charles Bureau crime covers. He had some really unusual books, very interesting, very bizarre stuff on some of his covers, but. And then there's these kind of like great books that are kind of like a mixture of crime and PCH, kind of like in a way, like Crime Mysteries. I think is probably one of the hottest titles out there. Just some really exceptional stuff in those as well.
Yeah, people are starting to coin the term, and I hear it used more often, of dark GA to sort of describe that interrelationship between crime and PCH is a good explanation for like Suspense 3 books like the Underworld Crime or the Crime Doesn't Pay Bureau cover that you referenced.
Those are all coming. I mean, in my opinion, those are all derivative from pulps, because pulps are all that. Like if you look, yeah, I mean, there are so many of the great crime mystery covers and other covers are actually direct cover swipes off of spicy pulps.
I'm learning about the swipes now, guys. I'm late to the game, but
I think they're also the direct reason why the code happened. I mean, if you're talking about the 1920s being racy, well, we cycled through, and when the 1950s come around, people were on that, let's blame somebody bandwagon of juvenile delinquency. That's all you hear in the radio shows. If you go back and listen to them, that's all you hear and see in the news. Oh, juvenile delinquency's on the rise. Let's blame somebody. Oh, comic books are them. And that's what happened. Wortham was certifiably crazy when it comes down to it. And for those who don't know a little bit of history, Wortham, Dr. Wortham created Seduction of the Innocent, and he was pretty much the downfall of the comic book industry. It went from 250 or 300 publishers all the way down to really 4 or 5 survived, and that's really all that made it through into the 60s.
Brian's trying to keep us on task at the risk of belaboring a point. Rick, I wanted to follow up quickly. So, books like Chamber of Chills 19 have a pulp precursor. There's a number of those books out there that have the precursor artwork from the pulp community that was lifted, inspired, homage, call it what you want.
Yeah.
Do you think that is a burgeoning market? I mean, when comic collectors figure out like, oh, that cover I love, that's, one of the most important comic covers, period, was inspired by a pulp, that they're going to go nuts for those pulps even more than they already have?
I think so. I think that there's, one of the encouraging things from this last pulp auction that we just had is we had 642 unique bidders. That's 642 different people who were interested in pulps in that auction and making bids. And so I think that's obviously a growth and pulling from the comic market. And so I think as people begin to see, this Crime Mysteries cover is coming from this. This Rangers cover is coming from this. This Wings cover is coming from this. I think there is going to be more interest in picking up some of those. And I can't think right off the top of my head, but there was a couple times where it was flipped too. There's a few times where the pulps pulled from the comics as well.
Yeah, so one of my personal favorites, it's not a pulp per se, but the help me out with the famous Kirby war cover. It was originally a painting by an artist, Hirsch's painting. You're familiar with the war comic? Somebody in the live chat will know.
I know which one you're thinking of, but I can't remember what the issue was. Really.
Yeah, so that was inspired by it was first published, that painting, on a magazine size, I guess for lack of a better description, pseudo pulp that CGC will in fact slab because it's not a traditional pulp. And I think that kind of history is the stuff that guys like me and you and Brian just love. Just love to see it. Anyway, let's talk about Batman.
Yeah, so this one's kind of rocked the world, from what I hear. So I don't go on to CGC chat boards, but from what I understand, we kind of made a splash with this one. I actually got to help bring this one in. This is my first $1 million book, so I got to hold it first. It was nice, but a little nerve wracking to put in your bag and get back to the office. You just it's amazing, you know.
I remember you walking back in the office with that. That was everybody was gathered around, like, ooh, wow.
Yeah, it's you know, the thing to this book is kind of, you know, what's amazing is my boss wrote this up. One of my bosses, got four. Barry wrote up the you know, description of it on the website, and he's so articulate about why this is so important. The yellows show defects very easily. The back with the whites show defects very easily, and they aren't there. They're not there. And that's what makes this so spectacular, is how clean this book is, how amazingly it's put together, and it's got white pages, like stupid white pages, like a Mile High book would have. And so, you know, when you hold this in hand, you just cannot. If this doesn't set a record, I'll be shocked. And we sold the Detective 27, you know, in November for $1.5 million. I said whatever that goes for, this should go for. But I mean, it's an auction, so maybe it goes for less, maybe it goes for more. I don't know. I can only manage expectations at this point. It's crazy. But this is probably the best book I've ever held, and just the best. I don't know when I'm going to top it. I keep trying to top it.
I snuck a picture with that one too.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. That was pretty. That is a breathtaking book in person. It really is.
It's a breathtaking book in photo. Tell me about what it's like to secure pieces of art like this, guys. I mean,
well, I think it's, you know, I would hope Rick agrees with me. We've kind of talked, you know, a lot, you know, on the side, but it's just a matter of talking to the people and making them comfortable with you. I had a client call me up and say, you know, I've got this piece of, you know, original art it's an Olivia. And I went, are we sure it's an original? Because when she showed me a picture, it looked like it was a lithograph, or it was a print. And she goes, oh, I'm pretty sure it's original because I used to work for Kevin Eastman, and Kevin Eastman gave it to me directly. And I go, okay. And so she goes, a month down the road, she goes, oh, what about this piece? This isn't worth anything. Well, we had actually had McKean, and I had seen it, and it sold for about $25,000. And I said, no, that's worth something, quite a bit. So we got it in, and when we got it in, she had said, well, this is Preludes and Nocturnes cover. And it is. It's a Sandman Preludes and Nocturnes cover. It's a shadow box, so McKean would take these, items and then paint the middle part. This one's about 3.5 feet wide by about 2.5 feet tall, about 4 inches deep. And she goes, oh, it's Preludes and Nocturnes, and it winds up being the Sandman #6 cover. It was really, the Preludes and Nocturne was a reprint of that cover. And I estimated $25,000 for that, and it went for what it went for, 50 something. So she was happy, putting in a pool. So all for something that she didn't think that was worth anything. She thought it was worth about $1,000.
have a turtles auction, right?
It just ended yesterday. Yeah. So that was wondering what it was going to pull for this. So that same client, because she used to work for Eastman, she was talking. She also knows Neil Gaiman, and our conversations are very funny because it's always, I used to talk to Neil about this, or I used to talk to Kevin about that, and I kept saying, "Well, I don't know these guys. Why don't you send me their way, or send them my way?" And so she actually knew Kevin Eastman's assistant, and introduced me to her, and that was at the time we were doing the turtles auction. It was about a month and a half before, and so I got on the phone with Kevin and my other greater partner Xavier, and we were on the phone with a conference call with her and Kevin Eastman, and he said, "Yeah, I'd love to send stuff in," and so he sent in. He goes, "Do you have any signature series books?" And he goes, "I'll send in a number one with a couple other things." And those are his personal collection. And I'm gotta say,
Like it
out of
was
all
no
the,
big deal.
I've got to say, yeah, hopefully he's watching because, and I've said this to him on the phone. He is literally one of the nicest guys you will ever talk to, the most gracious person in the world. He believes that his fans are what made him big, and I just couldn't believe how nice he was. And so yeah, he sent in 4 books or 5 books, and then 7 pieces of art. And there was a yeah, that was the issue number 7, page 13 splash. And so they actually sold yesterday, and the book went for 3 times the highest that it ever sold for a 9.0 turtles signed. So it went for crazy money. So he's happy, we're happy. I mean, you just, if you talk to people like you want to be talked to, I would hope that that's what you want, and that's what hopefully Rick and I do for you. You know.
You guys have a magic touch. My goodness.
One of the things that's great about, we're talking about so many, amazing pieces, but, and there's incredible things, but I want people to remember and think about, because sometimes, you talked earlier on about how sometimes people have a view of heritage as being like, somehow untouchable or whatever. But if you look every single week, we have weekly auctions every Sunday night. Every Monday night. Sunday night's the comics mostly. Monday night gets into video games and pulps and art and such. And you need to realize that there's comics there are items in there that go for low amounts, sometimes $30-$40. There's items that are $10,000, $20,000, but there's all kinds of different things that you can get in on weekly on every Sunday night, and check it out. And there's a ton of great golden age ungraded books that are going up every week right now. So check it out.
Wow. Guys, this has been magic for me. I really, really appreciate the time that you spent with me. For the people that are watching, can you just kind of tell them a little piece of advice about how they can begin to build collections, ones that they don't want to ever part with, ones that they can fall in love with forever, again and again, how they can have some of the magic that you guys have captured in your own personal comic book collecting adventures?
Well, you kind of just said it. Collect what you love. It's not about value. It's not that you don't do this because you thought that books were ever going to be worth thousands of dollars. Listen, if I would have kept everything I had ever owned, then yeah, I'd be a 100,000-aire a couple times over. But that's not. I was a dealer in the 90s, and that's not how my path went. But now I'm collecting because I'm getting what I love, and if I don't love it, I can trade it for things I love. And that's kind of what Rick alluded to that earlier and said that people are doing it all the time. They're always trading us stuff, and paying their bills with collections that, for the better stuff that they want. And that's what we do. That's what we make that happen. That's our job.
Absolutely. It's kind of amazing because this hobby is just it's kind of awesome, to be frank with you.
Yeah.
I got back into it just 6 years ago. The only thing, and remember, I said my wife didn't want me to spend any of my money. Look at my Instagram page. A lot of that stuff's gone, but a lot of that stuff I still have too. And it was from constantly, enjoying something, then selling it, and getting something else and selling it. And now, like, I really wanted to have great Planet Comics. I really loved Planet Comics, and I wanted to have really good quality issues of Planet Comics, especially of my favorite issues. But I just started with selling some stuff in my basement that sold for like $5,000. That's all I've ever put into this. And just kept rolling and rolling and enjoying more things. And so now I've got like original Peanuts strip that I have. I've got I kind of been into like starting to get into animation art.
Animation is where
Animation
it's at right
so
now.
cool.
So cool.
I just got like a really, really great Little Mermaid sell like a couple months ago.
I got a Freakazoid sell yesterday, or this week. It was 2 days ago. I won a Freakazoid sell this week. I was so happy. My first sell. I'm so stoked.
That's awesome. Yeah, so just all kinds of different things, and just growing and enjoying it, and continuing to play with it, and then and just I mean, I think that Heritage is a great place for the way I talked about trading things off and on, and so like let's say that a year from now I'm like, oh my gosh, I really want an Alex Raymond Flash Gordon page, like one of the really good ones. I mean, that's a $30, $40, $50, $60,000 page. Well, all right, well, I've got some stuff over here, maybe I'll trade that in and go towards that. So I don't know, that's my overall perception, is that my interests, I'm kind of the person that I like to have something. This is my collecting mentality. I want to have something. I want to go, oh, that is so cool. I want to enjoy it for a little bit. And I want to release it back and go, oh, where's that next thing I think is really cool? Oh, that's really cool. And so that's how I enjoy collecting. I'm not so much of a long-term person, except for like just a few pieces. But I want to keep having more things. I keep reinvesting. And that kind of keeps everything swirling around in the whole collecting community too.
Rick, Brian, guys, thank you so very much from everyone at Tales from the Flipside. It has been an honor and a privilege.
Well, thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Nico.